What up, everybody, and welcome to a very special crossover edition of the Charter Podcast and
Respect Coin.
I am Alex Shapiro, and he is
Michael Bolling.
And this podcast is brought to you by St. Xavier University and
𝗰𝐶𝗰𝗶 Chicago Southland.
Amazing. So, if you don't follow Respect Coin, you should, because it's a wonderful episode hosted by our digital lead here, Mike Bolling. It is all about sports betting. It obviously focuses on fun Chicago topics. And if you don't listen to Charter, you only listen to Respect Coin. I guess I'll let Bolling take it from here.
Yeah, if you are anyone who needs Bears content, Alex Shapiro, our wonderful host of the Charter, definitely has the best insights. Him, Clay Harbor, 𝗵𝗔 𝗵𝗀, got to shout them out. The Charter is where it's at. If you need Bears coverage, go to my man 𝗍𝗓.
And with the draft coming up, I mean, it's truly a perfect opportunity for us to do our first of hopefully many down the road Charter Coin crossovers, because betting on the draft can be fun.
And it should be fun, but I will explain this more in detail. Not something that you need to be betting the mortgage on. So lot to get to because this draft is coming up and the Bears have the 10th pick.
Yep.
Currently. A lot of things to discuss. First, we have the man who will be at Halas Hall on Thursday. What's the latest you're hearing on NFL draft topics?
Well, the more you read, the more you hear, the more you listen, it seems like the list of blue chip players might be a little smaller than the list of good football players, whether you want to call them gold, whether you want to call them red, whatever color you want to put them. There is a lot of solid talent that extends maybe further into day two than in years past. But those premium guys might be off the board early. So will a blue chip guy fall to the Bears at 10? Maybe not. But will they have the opportunity to add real impact players at 39, 41, and 72? Yeah, maybe. So a lot of really good players in this year's class.
Yeah, this is a very interesting draft, in my opinion, just as a fan. You know, I think the Bears will have plenty of options. We've done a couple mock draft simulations that, you know, they could get a blue chipper fall to them, probably unlikely. They could end up getting a day one starter. They could trade back and still get a day one starter. So a lot of things to consider. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to break out or how the board's going to break out, but I do think it is a really exciting time for Bears fans, obviously. You have your quarterback in place. There's always questions, as long as we've been alive, there's always been questions at quarterback. That question feels like it's been answered, so now it's about rounding out the rest of the roster. And I think this is a good opportunity for the Bears to maybe get someone who, you fingers crossed, could be a starter for you if they make a Super Bowl run.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll expand that. It's not just as long as we've been alive. I mean, everybody hopes that Caleb Williams is the guy.
Right.
But as long as pretty much anyone has been alive, the Bears have been trying to figure out the quarterback thing. It seems like they might have actually done it. It seems like they've got him in Caleb Williams. But going back to getting a day one starter, what is interesting about the 10th pick and the Bears where their needs are, and you mentioned a potential to trade back, I think there is a great opportunity to get an impact player, and it doesn't have to be at just one position of need.
Right.
We fully expect the Bears to draft a running back. That person will help Ben Johnson's offense, will complement DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson. That person will help Caleb Williams.
Absolutely.
If they go tight end, you need somebody to pair with Cole Kmet and Durham Smythe. Durham Smythe only here on a short-term deal.
Yep.
So you're going to want a tight end 2 to go along with Cole Kmet, because Ben Johnson loves his 2 tight end sets. It helps him be multiple, lining him up in line, in the slot, wherever, what have you. Tight end is an option.
Yeah.
Left tackle could be an option. What's up with Braxton Jones and his ankle injury? What's up with 𝗻𝗄, who is a big question mark? Dude has so much potential.
Right.
𝗻𝗄 could be a great left tackle. Still a bit of a question mark. And then defensive line. Bears need help on the defensive line as well. On the interior, even though they signed Grady Jarrett, again, older guy, shorter-term deal. They signed 𝗪 𝗍𝗪. Could still use more edge rushers. You could always
can never have too many.
So there are tons and tons of positions where the Bears can say, okay, 10, we love this guy, or we're going to move back and we love those guys. and get an impact player in the early stages of this draft.
Yeah, and what a lot of people, to just bring this over to the betting side, what a lot of people probably aren't aware of because it's so new is that there's markets for all of these topics. You can bet the exact player that the Bears will take. You can bet the position group that they'll take. You can bet how many offensive linemen will be taken in the first round. There's just so many markets to discuss. So let's get into some draft, some betting topics. Just to set the scene, the draft hasn't been bettable. I don't know if that's a word, but you haven't been able to bet the draft legally since 2020, and that was the first year. So if you remember, that was the COVID year. The entire draft was remote. And I thought that this was a really interesting nugget. I was doing some research because this is an information-based market. So, this is like a he said, she said market. Yeah. So if you have an inside source, I'm sure you're not talking about it. But if you do, definitely hit me up on social. I will always take any information that I can get. But because this is an information-based market, the books since 2020 have gotten so much smarter about setting these lines. I think in 2020, you were only seeing real kind of action on offshore markets. And as the FanDuels and the DraftKings of the world got into this, they were kind of shooting from the hip. And I think a lot of big bettors made a lot of money. So I saw this quote from Jeff Benson at 𝗭•Sports, and he said, bookmakers hate the draft and they torch 5 to 6 figures every year on it. So you might hear that as an opportunity to make out like a bandit and win some money. In the 5 years that this has been going on legally, very much razor sharp lines. And if you are seeing them, don't take them as set in stone. This, again, information-based. It's what Schefter's tweeting, what Rappaport's tweeting. Those are the people that you want to be looking out for. But I promise you, if you think that you're going to get there before, like you see the tweet, you're going to get there and you're going to get the bet in, it'll already be gone. So there's a lot of markets. There's a lot to consider. But have you bet on the draft before? I mean, I could tell you about tons of mine, but let us know.
Yeah. So I am a sports gambler.
Yep.
I enjoy dabbling, sprinkling a few dollars here and there, but I have only made one wager on the NFL draft, and that was 2 years ago. Because, as you said, it's so information-based.
Right.
And I feel like there was a time when there would maybe be overreactions to information. So the only wager I made, it was some report had come out that C.J. Stroud met with the Panthers, and all of a sudden, the meeting went great. And the line flipped, where for months we've been talking about Bryce Young is the presumptive #1 overall pick. And my personal thoughts were Bryce Young is going to be the presumptive #1 overall pick. And for like one day, there was plus money on Bryce Young. So I got in and I got out. And that's the only wager I've really made, because when you look at it, I mean, the favorites, the money isn't great. The value, I should say. The
juice is sometimes not worth the squeeze.
Exactly. So I've made one draft wager. And
1 for 1.
1 for 1, baby.
Not a lot of people can say that. I'm obsessed with betting the draft, and that's like not from I won a lot of money. I just think it's something that's different than betting someone to catch a touchdown or a team to win. And for a while, there's some times where you feel like you can outsmart some people. I don't have any sources, so this is definitely just speculation on my part, but it is different to bet something like the draft. And, some sports books will allow you to bet it live. So as guys are coming off the board, you can kind of project, okay, the Bears have gotten let's say the Bears get a tight end at 10, and then, the second round pick, maybe they focus on offensive linemen. So if you're reading the tea leaves, there's some opportunity to kind of have some fun with it. But again, this will be my final disclaimer. This is not an event where you should be trying to win next week's rent or next month's rent. It's just too all over the place. But you mentioned juice. I do think it's worth, mentioning. The books, again, are so good at this. If you get something in the -200 range, you might not bet that on like a baseball game or a football game, but that's more of a sure bet nowadays if you're talking about something like the draft, whether it's the NBA draft, the NFL draft. That juice isn't too much of a squeeze for me, because if you're betting $200 on that, you're probably going to win your $100. That means that the books have aligned, that this is pretty much a foregone conclusion. So
Edwards going 1.
Exactly.
It seems like Travis Hunter is going 2, and it seems like Abdul Carter is going 3.
Right, and without any last minute, 𝗬𝗏𝗻𝗀 𝗀𝗨 situations, you're probably going to see those 3 results happen. So don't be afraid to lay the juice. Some's not worth it. I think Cam Ward's now minus 20,000 to go number 1.
Probably
so
don't.
That's
make that
one
wager.
you don't need to bet at all. So let's get into some odds movement. Me and Alex have talked over the last couple weeks about just like tracking the lines, and a hot topic in this city, Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah.
Potentially going to be within the 6. Well, I've heard even as high as 4 potentially, but definitely surefire top 10 pick. I think if he gets to the Bears, they would take him. I don't see that being very likely. What have you heard?
I don't know that he will be there at
Right.
10. You hear that the Jaguars could be interested at 5. The Raiders, it makes a ton of sense. And then as you just go down the line, Ashton Jeanty is an explosive player who can help pretty much every team in the NFL. Maybe the Eagles don't need him because they got Saquon Barkley, but pretty much everybody else could use an Ashton Jeanty. Even the Saints picking right in front of the Bears.
Right.
He's drawn a lot of comps to Alvin Kamara, so they know what a player like Alvin Kamara could do. So personally, I do not see Ashton Jeanty making it to the Bears. If he was there, it would be so hard for them to pass.
Absolutely.
Just like it will be so hard for many other teams to pass, because imagine what Ben Johnson could do with a guy like this.
For sure.
I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs was so important in that offense.
Yep.
They had a Sonic and Knuckles, right? They had a Jahmyr Gibbs and a David Montgomery. Could Roshan Johnson be that David Montgomery? Has that David Montgomery yet to be on this team? I don't know. But yeah, Ashton Jeanty, if he's there, it will be very hard, I think, for the Bears to pass on him.
Yeah, and so the odds kind of bear that out. We looked last week, so just to give you a sense of how the lines move within a week, we talked about this last Monday. The Raiders were favored at minus 155. I do believe if he's at 6, they probably take him.
Yeah.
They have a need there. They don't have really a running back. The Bears were plus 260 last week to draft Ashton Jeanty. And this week, it's kind of changed a little bit. Mm-hmm. The Raiders are now plus 110 with the Jags at plus 195, and the Bears are plus 350. So that just gives you another case of you read the tea leaves, you see the reports, you start to hear rumblings potentially of the Jags maybe wanting to solidify their backfield by taking a person like Ashton Jeanty. To me, I don't feel like there's any value in potentially betting the Bears to draft Ashton Jeanty because, like you said, for all the reasons you just mentioned, it's going to be really hard to pass up on a guy like that. And you have a team that potentially could steal him right from in front of your face in the Saints. So as it stands right now, doesn't feel like there's very good value to draft Ashton Jeanty. I think if you got in on this early, and it couldn't have been much earlier, I think the lines kind of came out a few weeks ago. I think a lot of the tea leaves at that point were the Bears are enamored with Ashton Jeanty, so the value is probably not there, but a good lesson in how quickly a lot of these lines move.
Although plus money to the Raiders?
Plus money to the Raiders is very interesting.
The Chalk has said the Jaguars are going defensive line and they're going Mason Graham. This is kind of the example of the Bryce Young. Like, that has been the conventional thinking for a long time. There was this one thing, hey, maybe they're interested in Ashton Jeanty, and then it kind of turned again. It was like, no, it's Mason Graham. So
it's smokescreen season.
It's smokescreen season. So if you're able to get in on that small opportunity to get Ashton Jeanty to the Raiders at plus money, that is like, ooh, that kind of intrigues me actually a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And you could totally see a situation where you wake up on Thursday morning, your plus 110 bet is now valued at minus 170 because, the Jags maybe have a report that we're going defensive line. That's what it was in the beginning. So exactly like the example you made. And you're 1 for 1 on that bet, so you might be a sharp in this area. We'll have to see.
I've been called a lot of things. I've never been called a sharp when it comes to betting.
All right, so let's move to player to be taken in the top 5. This year, there's a ton of players on this market, players like Will Campbell, Mason Graham. Shedeur Sanders, a very interesting one. Heard a lot of hot and cold things about him, but on down the line. So last week, some players of note that have been swirling around Bears circles. Ashton Jeanty was plus 700 last week to be a top 5 pick. I looked again this morning. He's now plus 160. So that's a dramatic shift. So if you bet him a week ago to be in the top 5 and you kind of are reading the Jaguars tea leaves, it's almost better to take this top 5 pick.
Yeah.
Because he could end up going to the Patriots if they get obsessed with him. And then you obviously have the opportunity to kind of spread your wealth, right? He doesn't have to go to a specific team. As long as he's picked in the top 5 picks, you got an opportunity to win.
You got the opportunity for something wild to happen, like Jerry Jones falls into
Someone
one with him
trades
and
up.
says, oh, I'm going to trade up and grab, right? You know, so it opens up to those trade up scenarios. I mean, remember a few years ago, I believe it was the Darnell Wright draft, where everybody's talking about, is it Will Anderson or is it somebody else to the Texans, yada, yada, yada. They moved back up,
right?
And got
they had the second and the third pick, I think.
Exactly. They picked at 2, and then they got right back in there to pick at 3.
They're like, we don't want to worry about anything else. We're coming in. We know he's our guy. We're going to get him. And that happens often, very much in these drafts. So if you feel like this is something that you might want to bet, you should look down the board, right? Like if you think that somebody's going to come up, someone's obsessed with someone, there's opportunity here because, like I said, last week Genty was plus 700. Now he's plus 160. Guys like Mason Graham went from minus 150 now to plus 105. There's a trickle-down effect with all of these things, but you could potentially get plus money on a guy who is one of the best defensive tackles, probably the best defensive tackle in this draft.
Yeah.
And he's been linked to the Jags since the Combine. So there's opportunity at plus money.
That is so interesting. Yeah. All of a sudden, I'm like, am I about to make some deposits into my account today?
Might have to. And I know that this is a little bit off of, the Bears topic because the Bears obviously not in the top 5, but something to consider. We know that Ryan Poles loves to trade. I'm not necessarily certain that he would consider a trade up unless they feel like, someone else could swoop in. But when you're talking about these top 5, top 10 first round markets, it doesn't have to do with which team selects them. They just got to be picked in that number range. So there's opportunity if the Bears get frisky and they want to, trade up to get a guy like Ashton Jeanty. If you bet him at plus 700 last week, you would still cash your bet.
I will say the greatest deterrent to the Bears trading up might be that Ian Cunningham is still in the building as the assistant GM. I don't know if you've seen the videos, but last year the Bears were enamored with Rome Odunze. That became very clear. And video circulated, and I believe Ryan Poles kind of addressed this himself, that he was so anxious to get him. He really considered trading up.
And he was like, wait, just let him come to us.
Exactly. And Ian Cunningham was like, easy there, big feller. So they did stand pat. But Ryan Poles, we know, is not afraid to go get his guy. He has made several trade backs. But also when he wants to, will come up. He did that for Gervon Dexter, I believe. So, he will move around if he says, okay, there's actually value back there, and let's pick up some more picks. But if he's convicted and wants to go out and get his guy, I mean, we've seen that not only in the draft, going to get guys like Chase Claypool, going to get guys like Montez Sweat, Joe Thuney, Keenan Allen. He will use his draft capital if he has a guy circled, we need to get him. So I would not rule out entirely a trade up if the price is right.
Yeah, I mean, I think all you can do is trust in the guy that's the head of the head of the table, right? I don't think anyone's going to stand in his way if he's very convicted. If he says, in coordinates with Ben Johnson says, I need another running back. I think he would look at any option he could to potentially move up if he felt that Genty wasn't going to fall. So there's a lot to move. There's a lot to navigate. I mean, like I said, we've done a couple mock drafts and we were doing it for fun and it was really sweaty. Like I felt like I had no idea what I was doing, but you get 10 minutes to make these picks. And I was always someone who just like ragged on, why does it take 10 minutes? Just bring the card out. I'm like, now I'm starting to understand like this process is so much more involved than people think.
Well, you're also fielding phone calls, right? I mean, it's not just, hey, do we want to pick this guy or that guy? It's also, wait, we've also got the Miami Dolphins on line 1. And
they've got 3 picks for us.
Pittsburgh Steelers on line 2. And we got to listen to these offers because you do. You need to listen to all the offers because you can't leave any stone unturned. Right. Because you might love this guy right here, but if the Steelers make you an offer you can't refuse because Shedeur Sanders has fallen or because they love Jackson Dart and they want to get up and get Jackson Dart, you gotta listen. So yeah, it does take some time and they will not leave any stone unturned.
For sure. Okay, so let's move to the top 10 picks because this directly affects the Bears. Last week, some notable ones. Tyler Warren was minus 145. Now he's minus 180. Not a huge shift, but a shift indeed. Guys like Jalen Walker last week, minus 750, now minus 900. Will Campbell went from minus 650 to now minus 850. So all these things happen in a week. In terms of players that the Bears could target, if they don't move, if they're staying in the top 10, let's go through a little bit of these odds. Would you potentially want to spend $180 to win $100 to get Tyler Warren if he's there at 10? I feel like that's a smart bet, but to me, the tea leaves are kind of saying he may not be there either.
He may not be there either is the thing. So, to be honest, and I am not the most aggressive dude. I'm more of a conservative dude. I'm just staying away. I'm staying away because it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I don't know that the Bears are picking at 10.
Right.
B, they could go tight end.
Yep.
They could go running back. They could go left tackle. They could go defensive lineman.
They've got plenty of options.
Shemar Stewart is a guy who could be there at 10.
Plus 500 to be a top 10 pick.
Fits the Dennis Allen profile to a T. The only thing that's missing is the production. If the production is there, we're talking about him being a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
Mike Green.
Yep.
He's got the traits. He's got the production. Maybe there's a question about Marshall. There's a question about him leaving Virginia with, assault allegations.
Right.
There are questions, and he got in front of those allegations. He addressed them. So there are so many different roads they could take. To me, I'm staying out of it.
Yeah.
I'm staying out of it. But I would say if we're talking about sticking at 10 and making a pick at 10 and a guy who could be there at 10, I will say the guy who ticks all of those boxes to me does feel like Tyler Warren. He is an offensive weapon who can do so much. He can block. He can line up in line. He can line up in the slot. He can line up out wide. He can line up at fullback. He can line up at quarterback running the Wildcat.
I'm like, this is crazy. This is perfect for something like someone like a Ben Johnson who does like to run trick plays. Like, a week ago, I was like, I don't know that we need to spend the 10th pick on a tight end. But when you consider the fact that this draft seemed like there was more blue chip guys, and then after the evaluations, I think that number, like you mentioned off the top, has shrunk a little bit. Now you're just trying to find a guy that's going to play for you for the next 10 years, right? Like someone you can't let out of the building. And when you consider what Ben Johnson was able to do with a guy like Sam Laporta, and no one ever talks about Brock Wright, but in this system, it would be Tyler Warren going out catching passes all the time. And then you have someone who's already started catching passes and touchdowns in 𝗏𝗀 𝗏𝗀, who plays that other role. So I kind of like it. I don't know, minus 180 is necessarily good value if you consider that he might go earlier. But just to kind of continue looking at this line movement, like when we break it down, it's funny to think that Shedeur Sanders is plus 135. That kind of feels like to me that he's not going in the top 15 pick.
To be the pick at 10?
Or to be in the top 10 in general.
To be in the top 10. Yeah, to me, that would have to be two things. It could be the Giants.
Yep.
But that doesn't – it seems like Abdul Carter's the pick. And, when – We've asked a few people about this. Hey, why would the Giants send all of their brass for one more workout with Shedeur so close to the draft when you would imagine that evaluation stage is done? The answer we heard over and over was the building's not in alignment, and they want to get on the same page. There's not a consensus there, so they did that last workout to form a consensus.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting what that consensus was coming out of that workout. So the Giants are an option. The Saints, because of Derek Carr's injury, do they love him? And then, is it the Bears? Does somebody like the Steelers, who similarly, are expected to need a quarterback?
Yep.
Do they move all the way up to get Shedeur? But you have other guys who are in the mix. It's not just Shedeur. It's also Jackson Dart.
Yep.
It's also Tyler Schaub from Louisville.
Yep.
So again, it could go so many ways. There's a world in which Shedeur Sanders is a top 5 pick. There's a world in which it's like Lamar Jackson.
For sure.
Where somebody comes in at the end of the first round and says, okay, you know what? He's talented. We're betting on the upside. Let's go back in at the end of the first to draft him. So it could be a wide range of outcomes. So again, I'm a conservative guy. I'm just probably not getting involved.
Well, in this market, and we've talked about a lot of the names. I think the one that stands out to me would be Kelvin Banks Jr. at plus 135. Simply put, if the board falls the way it could and all these blue chip kind of top guys are off the board, we would both agree one of the biggest positions of need is obviously left tackle. This is a guy who is a left tackle. I know a lot of people are on opposite sides of the fence about it, but if you're talking about value, you could get a guy like Kelvin Banks Jr. at plus 135. Not a bet that I'm going to take, but just some value to discuss. Okay, let's talk about Bears specific. Position of Bears first drafted player. There's been a lot of line movement in this market.
Yeah.
Last week, the favorite was running back at plus 230. We talked about Ashton Jeanty quite a bit. Just behind, offensive lineman plus 260. So those are basically co-favorites in my opinion. One is a little bit, 30 cents to the dollar. Third, defensive lineman and edge, that was plus 360. And then tight end at plus 600, and then on down, linebacker, cornerback, safety, wide receiver, quarterback. Quarterback, 150 to 1. We know that's not happening. This week, the favorite, tight end, plus 240. Defensive lineman and edge at plus 300. Running back, also plus 300. And offensive lineman at plus 380. So the board is moving. The tea leaves are tea leaving. And now it feels like the consensus, not the consensus because no one has agreed on it, but I do think the opportunity for the Bears to draft a tight end that can go out and catch the ball and make that offense a little more hard to game plan for is the favorite. Do you agree from your standpoint of everything you've heard and assessing what Ben Johnson potentially needs in his first year as coach?
In the Tyler Warren situation, I think yes. And to be honest, we haven't spoken at all about Colston Loveland, who maybe doesn't do everything that Tyler Warren does because he literally does everything, but is potentially a better athlete.
For sure.
Is potentially a better athlete. And from reading reports out there, sounds like this guy made the circuit and crushed the interview process. Teams, it seems like, really love Colston Loveland. So do the Bears trade back and get Colston Loveland instead? So I like tight end, but I'm not discounting offensive line, and I'm also not discounting Shemar Stewart. Is this a scenario where, let's say, the Bears really believe in some of the tackles on day 2, and they love a Shemar Stewart, they love a Mike Green, or do you feel that there are better defensive ends, better edge rushers on day 2, so maybe they get a Kelvin Banks? Do you take 2 tickets here and buy 1 slip for tight end and buy 1 slip for the line of your choice? That might be the move. Spread the love a little bit. They're both plus money. Okay, if you hit one of them,
you pay for the other. This is something that I definitely employ. I haven't done that yet in this market, but definitely something to consider, right? We know that the Bears have as many options as they do. We know that they have a few positions of need that they can fill with very good and, potentially a blue chip player here. But if you're talking about plus money, you're not laying the juice, it is not a bad thing to potentially sprinkle the board a little bit. I would never bet more than 2 opportunities in one market because then you're kind of wasting money. But let's say you bet $10 on tight end at plus 240 and you also put $10 on offensive line. Sure, you're going to lose that $10, but you would make the exact same amount of money basically that you would for that one bet if it does fall offensive line. Also, another reason why you don't spray the board is because if you spray the board and the one thing comes up that you didn't take, you're going to feel really, really stupid. So I would be careful with it, but this is a scenario, obviously, we've talked through it, right? They're rich with options. They don't have to have one specific player, and it's a transition year, right? Ben Johnson's first year. We're not necessarily privy to the conversations that are happening at Halas Hall. So if you had to pick one in this market, what would you choose?
Today, right now.
Right now.
Tuesday, April 22nd, 12:56 p.m. As we go through everything, I think the top tackles are going to be gone. That includes, Wilson, Will Campbell, and Armand Membu. I don't think Ashton Genty's going to be there.
Nope.
I think that the Bears can get a really solid defensive edge rusher on day 2. And I think Tyler Warren could be there and is a special, special player. So if I had to pick one, give me the tight end.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to discuss mine. It might be the same. It may not. It's a little bit of a tease. But I'm glad that we were able to go through the markets. Now let's talk about some of our bets.
Yeah.
So bets I've already placed. One disclaimer for this. I will definitely have a different number than a lot of people. I started betting on this draft last week. So I may have gotten some sharp numbers. I may have gotten some cooked numbers. There's a good chance it's on either side. So, but take that with a grain of salt. Obviously, just sharing my information, things that I'm on. If the numbers are similar, obviously, if I'm giving it out, encourage anyone who's actually taking action. If you want to follow, very much up to you. My first one.
Yeah.
The worst kept secret in the NFL draft year over year is that there's not going to be more than 2 quarterbacks taken in the first round. There's going to be more than 2 quarterbacks taken in the first round.
Yep.
It happens every year. I think everyone last year was like, no way Penix is going to be in the top 10. I won that bet. I'm like, someone's going to come up and get him. I don't know who it is. And the Falcons did that. So there is a market. I will be placing these bets on DraftKings. Total quarterbacks taken in round 1. Over 2.5 is -135. That's juice I'm willing to lay. I do think one of Jackson Dart, Milton or Milrow.
Jalen Milrow, another guy we haven't really spoken about.
Someone who, traits off the charts, someone you could potentially mold, doesn't need to play right away, but you're afraid somebody may come up and scoop him. So over 2.5 quarterbacks taken in round 1. Are you in, out? Do you think it's a good bet?
I mean, Cam Ward you already got Cam Ward done.
That one's knocked out.
Shedeur could absolutely see him being a first-round pick.
Yep.
Jackson Dart, again, could see him being a first-round pick. Jalen Milrow and the guy from Louisville.
Yep.
There are 5 guys in play. Teams need quarterbacks. I mean, teams simply need quarterbacks. If you don't have one, you gotta go get one. It doesn't matter that, last year was a better quarterback year. That's just kind of tough luck.
Yeah.
For who is in need this year, you still gotta go get them. So, yeah, I'm with you on the over.
-135 on DraftKings. Feeling pretty confident about that one. And I was listening to, I think Peter Schrager on ESPN was saying there could be as many as 4. And if I found an alternate market somewhere, I might take that because the odds might be better. But feeling really confident on over 2.5 in the first round. What do you got?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Are we able to parlay top 5 and top 10 picks?
Cannot. You can parlay top 5 with top 5, but you can't parlay 5 and 10. Yeah.
Okay, so I might do something like parlaying Will Campbell and Mason Graham to be top 5 picks. Taking advantage, similarly to the Bryce Young situation, taking advantage of this idea that the Jags might be grabbing Ashton Jeanty.
Yep.
Could they? Totally. But let's not forget, they have Tank Bigsby. They have Travis Etienne. Both really, really solid running backs. So it's not as much of a need as a defensive line is. So if we pair those 2 guys together, that might give me an interesting number because I do feel pretty good about both of those guys being top 5 picks.
You said Campbell and
Mason Graham.
Campbell and Mason Graham, top 5 picks. Right now on DraftKings, you can get it at +220. That's good value.
Oh, let's go. And then what if we put together Armand Membu and Jalen Walker, and let's throw a 3rd guy in there to make it more interesting?
For top 10?
For top 10. Do we need to make it more interesting, or what is it with Jalen Walker and Armand Membu?
-323, so you got to make it more interesting.
Got to make it more interesting. Mason Graham probably doesn't move the needle.
He's -900 now.
He's -900. What if we add a guy like Shedeur Sanders?
Oh, now you're talking about +254. So you need a trade up. Or the Saints or the Giants could potentially do that. The only thing that I fear if you're thinking Giants is the Giants maybe are not aligned in their building. But if Abdul Carter falls to you, you kind of have to take him, right? Because you could be the team that traded away Saquon Barkley and then passed on a guy like Abdul Carter. I don't think anyone could survive that, but if you added Shedeur Sanders into that, you could get that at +254.
And I imagine there's like Ashton Jeanty, that's silliness.
And not even on the board.
So depending on how you feel about Shedeur, that could be interesting. How about Michael Williams?
Okay, he's plus 100. If you want to add that with Jalen Walker and Membu, you are at plus 162. So
Okay.
good value there as well.
Okay, Shedeur is more interesting to me because the quarterback of it all, and
Right.
because it's such a wide range of outcomes. But that top 5, that might be where I go, is trying to parlay a couple of top 5 picks, a couple of top 10 picks.
Yeah, so I actually have a bet that I placed, and this was just an example of how quickly lines move and how quickly, if you are convicted in something, you may need to move to get good value. We did a mock draft, and we had a trade proposed to us from the Miami Dolphins,
Yes.
fake Miami Dolphins, because they wanted a wide receiver, and then they took, in the simulation, they took 𝗵𝗻.
Yes.
Really good wide receiver out of Arizona, probably going to be the first one off the board. I did place that bet. But because of some of those tea leaves that I pretty much manufactured for myself, 𝗵𝗻 and Tyler Warren to go in the top 10. Like if somebody is wide receiver needy, they want to jump in, there's a trade. There's an obvious opportunity if the Saints wanted to get involved to potentially take him at 9. �cri𝗏 𝗟𝗏 obviously has had some injury history. But I placed the bet last week.
Yeah.
Both of them to go in the top 10. Plus 744 at the time. Right now, that bet is plus 450. So you lost plus 300 worth of value in just a week.
Wow.
That doesn't mean that Tet's going to go in the top 10. Obviously, there's no sure things. But getting in early allows me to rest easier, right? Like if you put 10 bucks on it, you win 84 bucks. But if you put 10 bucks on it today, you only win 45 bucks. So moves quite a bit. It is really fun to parlay some of these. I would be cautious on potentially putting in long shots. There's not a lot of names on the bottom of the board that teams are going to potentially come up for.
Right.
So you're banking on whatever those top 10 teams are, with the caveat that a Jerry Jones could move in, someone could come up for a quarterback. But outside of that, I don't think the market's that fruitful. So be careful if you're doing that.
I got some long shot questions for you. Guys
Okay.
who I think could be a long shot,
Okay.
top 10 pick.
Sweet.
1, Omarion Hampton. We talked a lot about Ashton Jeanty.
Yep.
Omarion Hampton, also an extremely good running back. What are we talking for him?
Plus 1,500 right now to be a top 10 pick. So 10 bucks wins you 150 bucks. This is a situation, I think, with the Bears being at 10, makes it a little fruitful, right? Mm-hmm. You know that the Bears could benefit from having a second back to pair with DeAndre Swift. At 15-1, I'm not going to say that I hate it because I kind of love it, right? If you're doing a dart throw, this is very much like I have 10 bucks extra in my account. I have a free bet. I have a bonus bet, whatever. This is something I would sprinkle for sure. Because if Genty ends up going, early, let's say he gets taken by the Jags, the Bears have a lot of time to figure out, okay, let's go back and look at our board for Hampton. He was in a top 30 visit. He was in the building. If let's say Tyler Warren gets taken, let's say he goes to 7 at the Jets, or the Colts come in and trade and they want to add their, then you're talking about, do we like Colston Loveland more than we like a guy like Hampton? At 15-1, I think that's worth a dart throw for sure. If you think if they're actually as interested as we think they are, and I know that they are very interested in running back.
Yeah. The other dart throw I have, just in case 𝗵𝗻 is not the guy, Matthew Golden to be a top 10 pick.
12-1.
12-1?
Yep. Wow. Those guys are down kind of lower on the board. I mean, I think when you look at the players above them, Mike Green is 10-1.
Yeah.
You have Jackson Dart at plus 500. That feels like a little bit of a reach, but you never know. It's a quarterback. Shamar Stewart, someone who we talked about a lot, plus 425. Top 10 might be a little rich for him, but again, he has all the traits in the world. He just didn't have the production on tape. So this is why I love the draft and betting it, because there's so many opportunities, and all you have to do really is like find a couple that pay off for you, and then you can have a successful first round of the draft.
I might be burning money here, but I might have to sprinkle on the Golden or the Omarion Hampton.
Do you want to know what it is parlayed?
Oh no, that's outrageous.
200-1 for both Matt Golden and Omarion Hampton to be in the top 10.
I will not be placing
that one. Is not a very smart bet. Another bet I have that is laying some more juice, but We talked about 𝗵𝗏. There's an offer, or there's a market for the first wide receiver selected, first wide receiver off the board. I got it at -165. I think that that's 100, not 100%, but I think unless someone is very obsessed with Matt Golden or 𝗦𝗏𝘀𝗀𝗋, I do see 𝗵𝗏 being the first wide receiver taken off this board, and I don't know if you have any thoughts.
I could see a world in which Matt Golden is
Really?
the first guy. Yeah, just based off of things I heard at the combine. It seems like scouts like him more than the court of public opinion, for instance. And,
which is what matters.
Yeah. And again, I'm not trying to drag this guy, but similarly, when talking about 𝗵𝗏, some guys were mixed. And it depends on the scout you talk to. It depends on the coach you talk to. Everybody is looking for different things, right? We heard Al Harris talking about he had Rome Odunze #1. There are some scouts who had Jayden Daniels ahead of Caleb Williams, the most consensus #1 overall pick, right, that we've had since Andrew Luck.
Yep.
There were some scouts that had Jayden Daniels ahead of Caleb Williams. So it just depends on the team. It depends on the coach. It depends on the scout.
Yeah.
But I've heard some people out there that they got Matt Golden ahead of `𝗵𝗏. So again, like, if you love Matt Golden, if you're a Tigers fan, you're like, let's go Tigers. maybe again that's an opportunity, but I might have to be sprinkling. I don't know.
Matt Golden is +120
to be the first wide receiver off the board. I see a world in which, okay, maybe he's not a top 10 pick, but maybe he is the first wide receiver off the board. I do think there's a world in which that could happen.
For sure. All right. Bears position of first drafted. I did take a market. I did take tight end. I have it at +350 on DraftKings. Again, we've talked about this quite a bit, but it can't be underscored. And you actually enlightened me today, just like on off-color conversation, because Colston Loveland, someone I watch, I root for Michigan. That's my team. Really impressive. He was the best offensive player on the team. I think when they won the national championship, he's so hard to like game plan for because he's fast. He's got the yards after catch. But this is why I like betting the position versus the player, right? Because if they swing and miss and someone comes in and gets Tyler Warren, but they are position obsessed, you still cash your bet. So I do like it. And I also, for all the Bears fans, the charter fans of this show, this specific show, will know what I'm talking about. We love tight ends. We just like bring in tight ends like a revolving door. We have so many tight ends year after year. So I'm betting on like the market and the value, but I'm also betting on the tendencies. And I do think Ben Johnson has proven with his time in Detroit that having a good tight end core and a room that can actually produce, you're only getting better if you take one of those two guys. So hopefully, fingers crossed, they get one of those two guys and we cash the bet. And just to follow up, I do sneak nuke a little bit. I like to take the little sneak nukes. I got Colston Loveland at +600 to go to the Bears specifically. Okay. So I didn't take a bet on Tyler Warren. The value was gone. But because of the conversation we had earlier, knowing that they might view tight end as more of a position that they want versus need, and they, can find a really good value on getting a guy like Loveland. Even if they trade back, they could still end up picking him. So betting the Bears to pick Colston Loveland +600, that is an example of kind of hedging your bet in a sense, right?
Totally.
Like you could get them, you could see the Bears taking Tyler Warren, you cash your bet. You could see them moving back and taking someone like Colston Loveland, then you win 2 bets. And what's better than winning 1 bet? Winning 2 bets.
And here's the thing, you can see a real path to it because the Bears kind of, and lots of GMs work in clouds of players. They trade back a handful of spots because they have enough players in their cloud that they like. That could include a left tackle, that could include a couple defensive ends, and that could include Colston Loveland. Well, guess what? In the 7 picks that rattled off the board while they moved back, there went the left tackle, there went the 2 DTs. It doesn't matter because Colston Loveland is still in that cloud and he's still there, right? So that's where some of these other move back scenarios, you could see it playing out. Oh, we like Mike Green, we like Shamar Stewart, we like XYZ. As those players rattle off, it doesn't matter because we have this list of 6 guys, and as long as we get one of them, we feel good.
Absolutely. So Those are my bets. Do you have any others that you're taking?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
So you're gonna.
I'm kind of firing off some of these wagers.
I love it, and that's honestly as we kind of wrap up, like the betting the NFL draft. Again, I've said it a bunch of times. It's not about like a lucrative money event.
Yeah.
This is something that you're going to be watching with your buddies, with your family, out at a bar, at your house, whatever it is. Just an opportunity to kind of get yourself in the game. Everyone has fantasy football teams. This doesn't work the same way, right? Like the teams are going to take who they need. They do not care about our bets. They're not looking at the markets at all.
No.
But it's an opportunity just to kind of relay. If you didn't know that you could bet the draft, you can. And I definitely don't encourage anyone to bet outside of their means or to try and win a bunch of money on this event. It's information-based, but it's a lot of fun. And if you're someone who really does like reading articles, reading, the news, following the tea leaves, whatever, this is an opportunity to kind of put your money where your mouth is, in a sense. So no need to spend a lot, but could be a lot of fun. In closing, we've talked about this a lot. You're the GM of the Bears. No trade-ups, no trade-backs. Who are you taking at 10?
Is this like in a perfect world?
Perfect world.
In a perfect world.
The best player falls to you at 10. Who do you think that is?
It's the best player at the position of, in my opinion, the biggest need, which remains offensive line. I don't think the work is done on the offensive line. When you look at Braxton Jones, and he is not expected to be back for the start of training camp. You look at Karan Amagaji, who is a question mark. Adding left tackle talent is important. Will Campbell, I don't care about his arm length. If Will Campbell falls to the Bears at 10, which I do not believe will happen,
right,
it is a run to the podium moment.
Yep, and I would 100% agree. We didn't even think about this question before. I just kind of sprouted it. But if Will Campbell is there somehow, you have to take him.
Yeah.
You have to take him. The arm size be damned. I don't care. You got to have somebody with a mean streak. Those guys that play left tackle have to be a little bit crazy. They have to want to throw guys on their butts. They have to want to take a lot of pride in it. I agree with you. The position of most need, in my opinion as well, is offensive lineman. Would I be mad if they take a swing, running back, tight end? Absolutely not. But I personally, as a fan, am tired of just reaching, maybe trading capital for someone who doesn't pan out. If you want to increase the chances of winning, you solidify the offensive line. So that's the position I think potentially they need the most. If Will Campbell's there, if Membu's there, kind of iffy on Banks, but if the board falls to the direction that kind of goes against what we need, and that's the fallback, that's a pretty good fallback.
Yeah, Kelvin Banks would be a wonderful fallback. For what it's worth, won the Lombardi Award for best lineman in the country. Another guy who was a left tackle, super durable, made a ton of starts at Texas, great run blocker. I'm with you, man. Left tackle and here's the other thing about left tackle. Defensive end, you'll find edge rushers on day 2. You'll find edge rushers on day 3. Running back, this class is deep. It's not just Jeanty. It's not just Omarion Hampton. It is a long list of guys that go on to day 3. Tight end. We spoke a lot about Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland because they are the creme de la creme.
Right.
But you got Elijah Arroyo. You got Mason Taylor, who might be a first-round pick now.
Maybe.
You've got Harold Fannin, who is a super intriguing prospect.
Ferguson from Oregon.
Yeah, we could go on and on and on. The guy from Clemson, who's like a power slot, Bring-Ring Stool, whose name I just totally butchered. Bring-Ring Stool. Again, we could go on and on and on and on. Left tackle.
Not going on.
And I know Ryan Poles, these guys know offensive linemen.
Yep.
He deserves all the credit in the world for finding Braxton Jones in the 5th round,
Crazy.
I believe. Found a starting left tackle back there. So if anybody can find a gem, they've shown that they can find those gems, but typically that list of tackles is just shorter year after year. So left tackle, huge position in need.
Absolutely. All right, this was fun, man. Crossover episodes, more of them loading, because I do think there's so much synergy with the reporting and the news and how you guys interpret that. And as bettors, if you're actually doing your research, it could be extremely valuable to just know what's going on inside of 𝗏𝗏, what people are talking about, what other reporters are reporting on. And that's kind of how you make your decisions, right? I'm not a reporter, I'm not on the beat, But I do respect and honestly, value a lot of the opinions and the things that you guys bring in. So when I put my head on the pillow, if I lost my bet, at least it was sourced, right? Like, we're not betting, we're not shooting in the dark. When it's talking about information, gather as much as you can. And when you feel good about it, after you place your bet, as long as you can let your head hit the pillow and say, I was convicted by that, whether I win or I lose. It's like betting red or black on roulette. Some people like to bet green, and those people are crazy. But if you just bet consistently, you can't be too mad when you lose, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing. As a casual bettor, it's also great having the insights about, hey, is there value here? What markets are even available to me, and what markets can we kind of take advantage of?
Right.
That conversation about, hey, the position, or taking the player to be the first player pick, not necessarily a top 10 pick, going over all of those things. If you're a Bears fan and you're just trying to get into this gambling game, you just downloaded your favorite sportsbooks app, this is a great way to learn about all the different markets and, where you can potentially find value as we all have fun watching the draft.
Can't wait.